Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mexico Relocation Guide Live. Today's live stream is all about answering your questions on regarding moving or living in Mexico. If you're new around here, my name is Mariana. I am the owner of Mexico Relocation Guide, and Mexico Relocation Guide is a website dedicated to giving you a lot of information on moving to Mexico, but also giving you the steps you need to move to Mexico the right way, and then also the contacts in Mexico that can help you move to Mexico, from immigration facilitators to realtors to private drivers. We have a lot of different contacts in our Mexico Relocation Guide. So thank you all for being here early. I see so many questions and some people here who have taken advantage of showing up early so they can post their question as soon as possible. If you're new around here and you have no idea how to post a question, there is a live chat function. Click on that, go ahead and type in your question. It'll pop up on the screen, and then I'll be able to read it and get to it on a first come, first serve basis. So thank you all so much for being here. I want to point out a couple of things. On Monday, it is an official holiday, the 20th of March. It's Benito Juarez, Natalicio de Benito Juarez, which is Benito Juarez's birthday. And that's the official birthday is on the 21st of March, but the holiday is on the 20th of March, which means that that is a paid holiday in case you have household helpers or garden helpers or anything like that. It is a technical holiday. So what that means is you're supposed to pay double their salary. If you pay 400 pesos per day, then you should pay 800 pesos for the day. If you pay 500 pesos for the day, then it should be 1,000 pesos for the day. Or you could always opt to give them the day off if they work every day, for example, or if you have a secretary or somebody else that's working for you in Mexico, you can always choose to give them the day off, or you can choose to have them work, and then of course you have to pay double pay. Also, Semana Santa, which is Easter, is starts Sunday, April 2nd, all the way through April 8th. And the reason I mentioned some of these holidays is you can expect things like schools to be out of school, some banks may close. They have this thing called puentes in Mexico, which means that basically they take from, usually from the week before, a Thursday or Friday, they take the advantage of an upcoming holiday, and then they usually have especially in schools and federal employees usually take that time as a extended holiday. So like a 4-day weekend, a 5-day weekend. So just keep it in mind. The only day that is an official holiday though is on Monday. And then for Semana Santa, it is usually a week long, and you can expect beaches to be crowded. You can expect hotels to be more expensive. If you're renting a car, you can expect those rates to go up. So just all things to keep in mind. If you're coming to Mexico to do your canje, usually immigration offices will be open except for Viernes Santos, which is usually Good Friday. And it may depend on the locality or the local INM office. So if you're working with an immigration facilitator, make sure you ask them about the first week in April and what you should look out for if you're doing your canje. So, okay, let's get started. I see some questions here. First off, thank you all so much for being here. And thanks so much for being here, Scott. Fantastic. Mexico. Can't wait to get there. So much to do and so much to see. I fully agree. Yeah, we can't wait for you to go wherever it is that you're interested in going to. Thank you so much for being here, Zen Maiden. So good to see you. Hey, let's see. What are some questions here? Hi, Brian. You are a permanent resident. You moved recently and are leaving the country 85 days after your move. Do you need to go to INM before leaving the country or inform them of our move when we get back to a new town? We are permanent residents moving recently and leaving the country 85 days after our move. So you can, just so everybody's aware, I think I understand your question, but when you do your canje, which is the process of exchanging your residency stamp that you get at a Mexican consulate for your residency card. So you're not done with the residency process until you travel to Mexico and get that residency card. That is canje, which translates to exchange, and that's the exchange of a stamp to the card. When you enter Mexico, you have to stay in Mexico until you get your residency card. Once you get your residency card, or you can ask for an exit and reentry permit, which gives you 60 days to leave the country if in case your canje appointment wasn't available and you needed to get back to your home country, or for whatever reason you need to move back or travel outside of Mexico while you're waiting for your canje appointment. Usually most INM offices now are getting them done in the same day or within a couple of days. So the exit entry permit isn't as needed anymore as it was maybe like a year ago. But for the sake of this question, if you leave Mexico, once you have your residency card, you're free to go in and out as you wish. You don't have to do anything specifically. However, if you are in the process of getting your residency card or doing your canje, then you have to either ask for a permit or permission, right, to leave the country, or you can't leave until you actually get your residency card. So, do you need to inform INM before leaving the country? That's another good point. So a lot of international airports, if you're traveling through an international airport, if you're flying out of Mexico, basically, I highly suggest that you go to an INM office and check in with them to see if you have to check in before your flight. Because the worst thing or the last thing that you want to happen is you check in for your flight, you don't go to INM to register your exit. I know this varies by airport. Some airports you don't need to go to INM anymore. For example, Mexico City, you don't need to register your exit with INM. Guadalajara, I also think you don't need to register your exit with them. But I know some airports you still need to register your exit. So what do? You check in for your flight, obviously, like you would at any airport. You first go to the counter for the airline that you're flying out of, show them your passport, and they will usually tell you if you need to go to INM and register your exit or not. However, not all airlines are aware of the requirements that INM has, and INM isn't really good at communicating those requirements to the airline. So it's kind of like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing kind of thing. So that's why I still suggest that you go to your INM office in the airport. They're usually at the international departures, and you go check out with them. If they do need you to check out, it's very simple. They'll just look at your passport. Everything is done digitally now, so it's a matter of them just looking at your passport and being like, yeah, you're good to go. If you're a resident, they will just look at your residency card and your passport and you're good to go. However, one thing that can happen if you don't go and check in with INM is sometimes you'll get to the counter, right? Like right before you're about to board, and an INM agent, or not an INM agent, the airline agent will say something like, you didn't check out with INM, or you need to register your exit with INM. And most of the time they have an INM when you're about to board your flight if they need you to register your exit. So there are like certain, foolproof ways of doing this. If in case, you don't watch this live stream, or somebody didn't watch this live stream and they didn't know they had to go check out, and then you hear it through a Facebook group or whatever, just know that usually they have an INM agent there to help people facilitate that process. But I would say just, if it were me, I would go to the INM office before getting to the gate where I'm waiting to board and just make sure that INM what the process is for that particular airport, because every airport is different. And then these things change constantly. So that's all you have to do. Now, if you're driving outside of Mexico, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to register your exit with INM. It's not a big deal. This is more important if you're flying out of Mexico. Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for being here. Can you buy a car in Mexico if you have temporary residency? Yes, you can. You can buy a car even if you are in certain states. You can buy a car even if you're a tourist. Like, for example, Quintana Roo is one of them, as well as the entire Baja Peninsula and certain areas in the free zone where you don't have to necessarily. I'm sorry. I am confusing something very important here, and forgive me for that. I'm confusing the temporary import permit with buying a car and registering your car in Mexico. So scratch everything I just said. Forgive me for that. Yes, you can absolutely buy a car in Mexico as a temporary residency. Permanent residents, temporary residents, Mexican nationals can all register a vehicle in Mexico. There is a loophole. If you were a tourist and you were to buy a car, you could put it in a friend's name and then register the car under that friend's name, and then the friend could basically give it to you or gift it to you. I don't personally recommend that. It sounds kind of like a loophole that may not work in your favor, especially if you're trying to get Mexican insurance on it. If you have done that, if you are watching this and you have done that, please share with me that how it worked out for you. But personally, I would want that registered under my name, with the correct offices locally to be able to get plates, to be able to get proper car insurance, and that there is no problems down the road, so that it doesn't end up in the corralón, which is basically, the wherever they take cars, right? Like a junkyard, basically, where you have to pay a fine to get it out. So yes, you can absolutely buy a car as a temporary resident. I was thinking about temporary import permits. And for those wondering what a temporary import permit is, a temporary import permit allows cars with specific VIN numbers to be driven into Mexico without having to nationalize them or without having to register them in Mexico permanently. So temporary residents and tourists and Mexican nationals can all temporarily import a vehicle from the United States or Canada, for example, for a specific amount of time. For temporary residents, it's for the amount of time that you get your temporary residency. For tourists, it's for the amount of time that you get your FMM. Usually it's 180 days, but it can vary. Sometimes FMMs are only given for 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, less than 180 days. So just know that. However, there are specific areas in Mexico where you don't have to get a temporary import permit if you're bringing in a foreign plated vehicle. So a lot of people living on the Baja Peninsula or the free zone area, which are border towns along Tamaulipas, Coahuila, and other areas, they don't need to ask for a temporary import permit. You can drive your car basically in that area with foreign plates for as long as you can or want to. However, for the rest of Mexico, and if you were to drive that car outside of the free zone, you are supposed to get a temporary import permit. So let's say you live in Los Cabos, and then you want to drive to Mexico City or Guadalajara or something like that, you would need to get a temporary import permit. So just know that if you leave that free zone, you are now required to get a temporary import permit. Permanent residents technically cannot have a temporary import permit except for when they're doing their canje. And the reason for that is when you come to Mexico to do your canje, if you're driving across the border, you're given an FMM for 30 days. And once you then exchange your residency card or your residency stamp for a residency card, it's indefinite, right? There is no expiration date. Whereas for temporary residents, there's an expiration date usually of the first year, and then after that you can renew for 1, 2, or 3 additional years. And then you have to renew your temporary import permit along with the 1, 2, or 3 years. Whereas a permanent resident doesn't renew. So just know that as a permanent resident, you are only allowed to bring a foreign plated car for up to 30 days only when you're doing your canje. So basically, the one thing you have to make sure that you abide by or follow is the time frame that you're given on that FMM. That's how long you can have a temporary import permit for. Thank you so much for being here, Tony. So nice to see you. Hi, Benjamin, Bojammer, sorry. I think my wife and I are just about to get past the first step of getting our temporary residency from our local consulate. What's next? Good for you. Awesome. Congratulations. I hope it goes really well. Once you get your temporary residency stamp, assuming that you get approved, you'll get a temporary residency stamp that's good for 180 days. That means you have 180 days to plan your travel to Mexico and finish the process. That's known as canje, which is what we're talking about. I would highly recommend that you not wait until 179 or 178 days. I would really recommend that you start that process at 150 days or before. You can start it as soon as you want, but I would really not recommend waiting until the last minute, essentially. Then, once you actually cross into Mexico, you are given what's called an FMM, which is a Forma Migratoria Múltiple. And because you're coming in for canje, you're going to be marked as a canje, not as a tourist, not as anything else. You are going to be marked as canje, and that FMM has 30 days. So you have 30 days from when you enter Mexico until you get your, until you can or have permission basically to finish the process of getting your residency card. Most people cross into Mexico and start the process right away, so they don't wait until those 30 days are over, but just know that you do have 30 days. If you're going to a city, for example, I think San Miguel de Allende is really one of the few cities that still gives out appointments weeks later, along with Playa del Carmen, some other like very popular areas. But most places will give you an appointment usually the following day or usually the same day, depending on their local procedures and requirements and how many appointments they're giving out, which is why I recommend working with an immigration facilitator. But if you are going to a city that, you know, for example, let's say San Miguel de Allende gives you an appointment 2 weeks later, don't worry if your FMM says, you know, let's say you come in today and it expires on the 15th of April or however many 30 days is from today. And let's say that they give you an appointment on the 10th of April. Don't worry, as long as you have been given an appointment, right, to start your canje, you are given a número único de trámite or a NUT, and that tells immigration or any official in Mexico that you are in the process of doing that canje. So even if you're waiting, right, for your residency card and those 30 days are over, don't worry, you're not going to get in trouble. But it is important to start that process before those 30 days. So thanks for being here. Melody, so nice to see you. I'm packing and getting rid of stuff. Yikes, there's so much to do. In your opinion, for rentals in Mexico City, is it more difficult to rent having both cats and dogs versus just a small dog or two? Do landlords have a preference? Will it be fairly easy to rent with pets? Fairly easy. I mean, I always think that having pets is gonna lower the inventory of places available to rent. It's just a common thing across Mexico. Maybe in some more like you know, populated areas like Mexico City, obviously, is one of them, Guadalajara, Puebla, Monterrey, you know, some really large cities, Querétaro, for example. I think it would be more common to bring pets into a home, into a rental. So I don't think you'll have a harder time per se. It just depends on your budget, really. And I think it depends on a lot of things, just what's available in the particular colonia or neighborhood that you're looking at, your budget, what kind of rental it is, you know. But my biggest advice is, even if a rental says no aceptan mascotas or no se aceptan mascotas, meaning we do not allow pets, I still think it would be worth to ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. The worst thing that can happen is they tell you no, or maybe they tell you, well, what kind of dog, what kind of cat, how old are they, how big are they, you know, those kinds of questions. And remember, you can always try to negotiate maybe a higher deposit, a higher or a pet deposit to begin with. You know, like you can always try to negotiate things in your rental agreement so that your pets are allowed. If you really love that rental, if you think, man, this is a rental for me, I love this neighborhood, but it just so happens that they don't allow pets, I would try to negotiate. But I would say no. I don't think like having cats versus dogs is going to be more difficult for one versus the other. Maybe a realtor would be able to tell you something differently. In my experience, no, it's not. It's not a matter of what kind of pet. Yes, having multiple, like more than two, will probably be harder, because then, you know, landlords will probably think that it might get trashed or it might get smelly, or there might be a problem with, you know, barking or neighbors complaining about the barking. So just keep that in mind. But again, I wouldn't let that discourage me. I still think that in Mexico City especially, there's so many rentals available. So if one doesn't work out, there will be plenty for you to choose from. Just depends on your expectations, right? And what's realistic. Thanks for being here, Melody. Hey, Mark, nice to see you. I'm confused about if there is a bank account in should set up in Mexico to transfer funds from my bank in Canada or some type of money transfer app. I don't really understand your question. Sorry, maybe you can clarify. A lot of people, and for Canadians, I don't think this works as well, but Canadians like to use Remitly, and a lot of people from the United States love to use Wise. And in Remitly, the benefit with them is, one, it's very low in fees, kind of like Wise is, as opposed to a wire transfer where they charge you a flat fee, and depending on the amount, that might be better for you. But if it's if you're paying your rent month over month, then you probably don't want to pay a huge fee month over month. So Remitly, another great benefit of Remitly is they have partners that they work with that where you can accept cash. So it's kind of like Western Union. If you have Western Union where you live, where you can pick it up at a grocery store or like a specific retailer that they have a partnership with. Remitly is very similar. They work with banks, they work with Coppel, they work with Oxxo, they work with a bunch of different retailers where you can pick up your cash. And usually the fee is not that high. So Remitly, look it up, Remtly. I'm going to put it in the comments if you want to check it out. So sorry, I don't know if that answers your question, Mark. Maybe you can clarify. Josie, thanks for being here. Do I automatically have dual citizenship if my parents were born in Mexico? I was born in the United States. Yes, you do, but you still have to apply for it. There is a process. Each consulate has a slightly different version of the paperwork that they need you to bring, but most of them want you to bring your parents' birth certificates, your birth certificate from the United States. They usually want your parents to come with you to the appointment. As I've seen at most consulates' websites require this. And but yes, you do. People who were born of Mexican parents automatically are able to get ciudadanía or basically get a Mexican passport, which is a huge benefit if you have Mexican parents. So yes, to answer your question, it just depends on which consulate you're going to go to, or if you're going to do it on the Mexican side. So if you're going to start the process in Mexico, the process does vary. Hi, Ana Elvia. Thank you so much for being here. She says the bureaucracy appears to be crazy. Is it? You know, it's not that Mexican bureaucracy is crazy, it's just that it's different. And if you're not used to dealing with different, it can seem frustrating, right? It can seem very crazy. But it's not that it's crazy. It obviously works. There's, millions and millions and millions of people living in Mexico and doing all kinds of legal procedures every single day. And, Mexicans are just kind of used to it. Is it frustrating that it's inefficient? Yes. Which is why I really do recommend building a network of people that can help you out in different things, especially if your Espanol is not great. Because legal Spanish is totally different than the Spanish that you learned in school or the Spanish that you're learning maybe through a tutor and things like that. Totally different. It's hard for me even, and Spanish is my first language, but if I don't practice it, I don't understand a lot of the legal jargon. So just know that it's not that it's crazy, it's just that it's different. And I do think that, one, you have to learn to be patient, right? Even if, let's say you try to get a driver's license on your own, or let's say that you're going to try to register your brand new car in Mexico on your own, and you go and you find out what the requirements are. You show up to the office and then they tell you, oh no, you missed one more copy of this. And I mean, even if you triple checked your paperwork, there may still be a bump in the road, which is why facilitators are really worth it, because they do this day in and day out. An immigration facilitator deals with all things residency. A car registration facilitator deals with all things car registration. Somebody who helps you get a driver's license has done it a couple of times before, dozens, maybe sometimes hundreds of times before. And so they know exactly what kinds of things they're going to ask you for, and that way you can come extra prepared. But if you do plan to do it on your own, it's not impossible. It just usually means that there will be some bumps in the road that there's no way you could have avoided other than just having somebody tell you exactly what to do because they've done it 100 times before. So I hope that helps. I really do think that it shouldn't discourage anybody from moving to Mexico. Just know that you will have to learn to be patient, because unfortunately it's not as efficient as Canada, the United States, Europe. So yeah, thanks for being here. What do you need to get residency in Mexico? I have a really good guide on resident visas in Mexico that I think you should check out because I highlight all the requirements. I highlight the basic procedure, how to get an appointment, um, how much you can expect to pay a facilitator, like what kinds of questions you should be asking them. I'm sorry, I'm pulling it up on my screen and I'm looking at it right now. So just to make sure that I am sending you the correct one, it's in the comments, but I have a lot of information in there, like what countries require a visa before you travel to Mexico, which ones will give you a visa on arrival. Um, I also include information on, the new digital FMM, whether you're driving in or whether you're flying in, what you can expect to get, which one is included in the cost, and which one you'll have to pay at the land border, how much you need to pay at the land border. We cover temporary import permits, what happens if you stay longer than 180 days. And then I also include all the income requirements for temporary and permanent residency, assuming that you're going to get started in the process in a Mexican consulate near you. Some people can start the process in Mexico if you're married to somebody who has permanent or temporary residency. If you are born to Mexican parents, if you have ties to a Mexican national. So some people don't need to start the process at a Mexican consulate. Some people, because if you live in Mexico right now and you're wondering, like, do I need to leave and come back? You may be able to start the process in Mexico. It depends on your situation specifically. Garrett, thank you so much for being here. Awesome. You're a new Mexico Relocation Guide member. You love all the content. So happy to hear that. Planning on doing my temporary residency this year. Awesome. Well, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the community. I hope that you get a lot of really good information here. Yeah, great question. And I didn't mention this earlier when somebody was asking about a transfer app or money transfer app. Banking. Should we use Schwab mainly for banking and just go to ATMs all the time? Is this what most people do? I would like to pay by wire transfers from service to pay rent. Is this common? Depends on the landlord. A lot of landlords are asking for rent in cash. Usually because if you transfer money to them, they have to pay a commission through their bank. Or because they have to pay taxes to the Mexican government since this is a income, right? Like it's rental income. So usually they want cash so that they don't have to report on some of those things. Or they might have their own reasons. I'm speculating on whether they're paying their taxes or not, but if they're asking for cash, probably the case. Schwab. A lot of people use Charles Schwab. I personally think if you're going to be living in Mexico full time, it'll be very convenient for you to have a bank account locally. For starters, some ATMs, they give you a cap on how much money you can pull out. Even if Schwab doesn't give you a cap, even if they don't charge you fees, if you're paying your rent every month, it can get annoying to have to get hit like 3 or 4 different ATMs. Depending on when you get the money out, some ATMs run out of money, so you're only able to get a portion of your withdrawal. It's just more inconvenient than it's worth if you're planning to stay long term. I really do think that having a local bank account can be really beneficial. And then the other thing that can be beneficial for having a local bank account is you get to do things like, sign up for telephone plans, internet plans, things like that, that usually require your CFE bill. If you want to pay your electricity bill online, they usually require a Mexican bank account. There's all kinds of different apps that usually require a bank account or a debit or credit card in Mexico for you to be able to complete that transaction. Not to mention that it just can become tedious to withdraw money every month from an ATM and then assume that the ATM doesn't run out of cash, or that it doesn't have a limit on how much you're withdrawing. Another account that happens to have zero international fees is a Capital One 360. And I'm going to put it in the comments section. I'm pretty sure it's this one. I don't personally bank with them, but I have heard a lot of people bank with them. Capital One 360, no fees, free ATMs. So it's another option for you. So look into that one if you're also looking into Charles Schwab. Any great cell phone apps you would recommend, such as bus routes, apartment search tools, etc.? Yeah, we have a blog post on the best apps or the must-have apps in Mexico. Number one, Google Translate. I highly recommend it. I think you'll use it a lot. It's really great. You can use it to, type a message to somebody if in case maybe you're at the grocery store and you're looking for a specific thing that you don't know how to say in Spanish, you can type it and then show it. If you're at a restaurant, you'd like to read the menu, you can scroll over a text and it'll actually translate it for you on your screen. So I think that's wonderful technology. So yeah, Google Translate by far, I think is a great one. Obviously WhatsApp. Mexico is WhatsApp country. So, and most of Latin America is, it's just how people communicate. It's very common for, your immigration facilitator to send you a WhatsApp. It's very common for a doctor to send you a WhatsApp, a pharmacy to send you a WhatsApp. Friends communicate through WhatsApp. So it's not only used in a professional manner, it's also used in personal communication. So WhatsApp is king, and calling through WhatsApp is not as common as texting through WhatsApp. So text message first, and then if you don't get an answer or it doesn't seem to, or maybe that person tells you, no, call me instead, then yeah, you can call through WhatsApp. But yeah, WhatsApp is highly recommended. If you're living outside of Mexico, I highly recommend you download it and get familiar using it before moving to Mexico. That way, once you're in Mexico, you can be one step ahead. Waze, I highly recommend if you're going to be driving through Mexico and navigating through Mexico. It's a really good app. A lot of people use it. Maps.me. Doesn't have, if you don't have the best cell phone coverage in Mexico, then you want to access Maps. Maps.me is a good one. It's a great backup in case your GPS, if you have a GPS on your car, or if you're using Google Maps or Waze or something like that, it isn't working. You download it and then you have the map available to you regardless of your cell phone coverage. So it's really, really good. It's available in both iOS and Android. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're transferring money, Wise, highly recommend wise.com or the app. Really great. You can also see what the current exchange rate is. That's what I use every day to see what the current exchange rate is, and if I need to be sending money at a specific time, or if I need to be sending myself money to Mexico because the exchange rate is more in my favor, or whatever the case might be. Rappi. Rappi is basically like Favor in the United States. I don't know what Canada has or Europe, but essentially you can ask people to get you a variety of things: medications, groceries, food. It's basically an app where it connects you to somebody who's willing to pick up something for you. Or they even have Rappi Cash, which if you have a bank account in Mexico, they connects to your bank account. Somebody can then bring you cash if you need cash at a specific situation, and it all gets charged to your credit card or your bank account. Uber, obviously, Didi. La Comer is another great one if you have a Comercial Mexicana around you, or it's just now known as La Comer. And that's a grocery store, big chain grocery store across Mexico. And they have a really convenient app where you can see prices, ask for groceries, pick up curbside, or ask for delivery, things like that. Rome to Rio is good for getting to know like what's the best route between one city versus another city, or between two cities. It gives you bus timetables. It gives you taxi approximate fares. It gives you the total cost if you were going to be flying, taking a taxi, and then taking public transportation. So it gives you a bunch of different options. So for your question specifically, Rome to Rio is a really good one. And then Units Plus Pro, if you want to make conversions, you're at the carniceria, you're at the butcher shop, you want to know exactly how much, 3 kilos of a specific item is, or and you want to convert that to pounds, or you want to convert, kilometers to miles, or you want to convert really anything to from the imperial to the other system. And I don't remember what the name of it is right now, but Units Plus Pro. I'm going to put it in the comments section because that is a really convenient one. And one of our customers shared that with me. So, and she uses it a lot. And then a lot of people in the community told me that they use it a lot. So I hope that helps. Thanks for being here. And if you want the list of all the apps that I recommend, I have it in the comments section. If you think of other apps that I can use on there, please comment on that article and I can add some more in there. Debbie Johnson, thanks so much for being here. 2 months in Ajijic, awesome. The canje was a very simple process, though I must give great thanks to you and all the extraordinary help I've received every step of the way. Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad. Very, very glad. Did you do your canje in Chapala or did you do it in Guadalajara? I'd love to know. Thanks so much, Greg. That means so much to me, Gregory. It's 100% the best channel in Mexico. That's so nice. Ultra and Studman, I like your handle. What do I need to do to move to Mexico, become a citizen, and keep my Social Security disability? For disability, I'm not exactly sure. I know for Social Security benefits, you can move to Mexico, become a resident or a citizen in Mexico, and never lose your Social Security benefits. I actually just posted on that recently. There is one thing that you need to watch out for, and that is a proof of life form that they send out every year or every 2 years, depending on where you live. But usually every year you get a proof of life form that you need to fill out so that your Social Security benefits payments are not interrupted. And if you live in the United States, it's not necessary. But if you tell Social Security when you apply for your benefits and you are living outside the United States, they will send this form to the address that you give them outside the United States. And they just want to make sure that you're still alive and that they're sending payments to you while you're still alive. So failure to fill this out and send it back to the Social Security Administration can mean you will not receive your Social Security benefits. So I posted the blog post in the comments. For Social Security disability, I'm not really sure how that's different and whether you need to remain in the United States for you to continue receiving your Social Security disability. Sorry. Hi, Samuel. Thanks so much for being here. What is your opinion of Zibatá for retirement? Is a community pretty much all-inclusive, mini city, which you need a car? I actually have family that lives in Zibatá, and that, for you guys that are wondering where that is in Querétaro. It is a mini city. It has a lot of really great things. It has, grocery stores, convenience stores. It has a great track where you can do running or walking. It has a lot of green spaces. It's a really nice gated community, and it basically is like a mini city. However, they still have a car. It's absolutely necessary for you to have a car. In my opinion, it's really far away from the city. You're looking at like 20 minutes. And the nice thing is it's outside of the city on the way to San Miguel de Allende. So it's easy for you to be able to get the road to San Miguel de Allende if you were going to do a weekend trip or something like that. But if you're looking at spending a lot of time in Querétaro, you're looking at checking out events, or you want to go see the downtown on a regular basis, Zibatá might not be the best place for you. But if you want to be away from the city and you want to have maybe a backyard with green spaces, you want to have this mini city, and you just plan to go to Querétaro city, right? Maybe once a week, do a big grocery trip, things like that, then I think it's a great option. They have really, really beautiful houses, very modern, very north of the border looking. Just it feels very crisp, very modern, very clean, very upscale. So that's my opinion about Zibatá. Personally, I would rather live closer to the city, but that's just my personal opinion. John, thanks so much for being here. My bank is a federal credit union in the US and does not wire money to Mexico. Okay. How can I make a payment to the facilitator I want to hire in Guadalajara? He suggested Wise. I don't know how to get a Wise account. Any suggestions? Yes, definitely. I suggest Wise as well. And Wise is very simple. All you have to do is you sign up for it, you give it your name, password, email, some basic information. You connect your bank account to Wise, and then it basically grabs the money from your bank account, uses Wise as like the third party. That's why they charge a fee. And then Wise transfers the money to, your facilitator's bank account in Mexico. I highly recommend it. It's not very expensive to use. In a recent comparison I did to, doing a bank transfer, to doing a Wise transfer, to doing a Remitly transfer, to doing a Western Union, Wise was by far the best. For starters, they're just pretty quick. The money is usually there the same day or the following day, and their commissions are pretty low. It just depends on how much you're sending, right? Because it is a percentage of the amount that you're sending. So if it's like a really large amount, you might not want to use Wise. You might want to do a bank transfer. For a facilitator, though, I'm assuming you're paying somewhere in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands. So definitely Wise. For information on how to sign up with them, I'm going to just go to wise.com, and it's very self-explanatory. They give you the steps there. If you want, I know you're a customer, so if you want, go to our private community, MexicoRelocationGuide.com, Facebook.com/groups/Mexico Relocation Guide. And you can ask that question and I can share some specific links with you. But just to move on with this live stream, I don't want to get too much into the details of it. It's pretty self-explanatory though. Wise.com. How much of a hassle is it to do an address change with a temporary residency card? Is it really necessary? I've seen mixed information. I'm planning on bouncing around the country a few months in each location. It's not absolutely necessary, but you should know that if you have a temporary residency, the first year or the first time you get your temporary residency, you'll usually be given your temporary residency for 1 year. After that, you have to renew. You have to renew for either 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. If you're going to be bouncing around the country, I would suggest renewing for 3 years, which is the max of 4 years that you can have a temporary residency for. And then after that, you can apply to become a permanent resident. You don't have to prove income. You don't have to prove much other than just that you're, in Mexico and that you have, your current residency without it being expired or whatever. But for you specifically, if you're still in that first year and you're going to be expected to renew at a future date, then it's not a big deal. You do have to come back to the INM office where you originally got your temporary residency card to renew it there. Otherwise, if you are, let's say you're living in, Puerto Vallarta right now and you plan to move to, I don't know, Playa del Carmen in a couple of months, you do have to change your address first at the INM in Playa del Carmen, and then you can renew your temporary residency there. Otherwise, you would have to renew in Puerto Vallarta or wherever it is that you got your residency card the initial time. It just depends on your situation. I think changing an address is significantly more important if you're going to be permanently living in a specific area. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is that even though it's very rare and hardly ever happens, INM can do a house check. They can do a random house check just to see that you're living at the house that you put that you're living in, or whatever address you put that you're living in. And if they find out that you lied or that you're no longer living in that area and you fail to notify INM, you can get fined and you can get your residency taken away from you. It is very rare, but it has happened. And I mean very rare, like 1 in every 100,000 people. But it has happened. So just be aware that can happen. So I know it's a flaw in their system. It seems kind of like, especially for people that are planning to move around a lot, they don't really have a system in place for you guys. But that's really my advice on that. Just know what you're legally obligated to do. You're legally obligated to change your address with INM within 90 days of moving to a different place. So it's up to you what you do. Thank you so much for being here. From Seattle, I'm curious, do people load up a container of their furniture and ship to Mexico, or do they start new and purchase furnishings there? I think it depends on how close to it depends on a lot of things. Is that person driving to Mexico? Do they have a lot of sentimental items? Do they maybe you're a chef and your pans and pots and knives are, you won't be able to replace them very easily. Or maybe you're a sewer and or maybe you're a quilter and you have to have specific things in your kit, right? Like you need to have a lot of cloth or yarn or things that won't be very easy for you to replace because first of all, you don't know where to replace them yet. Um, I would say that a lot of our customers end up selling a lot of their things and they just move with as much as they can fit into luggage, not usually, containers and things like that. But I do think it's pretty 50-50 amongst like all people that move to Mexico. I think some people say, absolutely not. I need to have my furniture. I need to have my things. And I don't care, right? And as a temporary resident, as a permanent resident, you can bring them to Mexico once without paying import fees. So that's big plus. But if you can get rid of things, I would say definitely get rid of things. A lot of people have found that for starters, if you're moving into a rental that is already furnished, a lot of your sheets and bedspreads, well, particularly the fitted sheet, won't fit the Mexican bed because Mexican beds are slightly smaller or slightly shorter than American beds. So a queen size bed is more like a matrimonial, and the matrimonial isn't exactly the same measurements as a queen size bed. Individual is not the same as a twin size bed. They're like slightly different. They're off by enough that your fitted sheets will fit a little wonky. So that's just something to be aware of. Other things that people usually wish they would have brought are things like towels, especially if you're very sensitive to fibers and things like that, or touch. Not that there's not really high quality things. There's very high quality things, but they might not be as easy to find as you just making a trip to what you're used to. So you might have to order things on Amazon and then trial by error. They're not as great as you thought they were. Other things that people wish they would have brought, like cookware, bakingware, things like that. And it's not that you can't find really good items in Mexico. Most of the time, you can find great things. It's just that there's not like there are Walmarts and there are Coppels and there are like these stores that have a lot of these items, but they don't have the ginormous variety that you're used to seeing in Canada and the United States. If you're from Europe, you're probably more used to this, where you have to go to different stores for different things. Mexico is very similar in that respect. So, just a couple of things that personally, from feedback from gathering from our customers, those are some of the major things that they wish they would have brought. Or books, right? Like specific books. If you're a reader and you need to have your collection, that might be something you want to bring with you. But I think that if you really want to move efficiently, I would say try to sell as much as you can, and you can purchase pretty much everything in Mexico, especially if you're moving into a rental that is already furnished. Uh, Maybe your things won't fit, or maybe it's better to just start off new. So that's my advice on that. I hope that helps. On the Mexico part of Canje, how important is it to speak Spanish? My wife and I are learning, but are far from even basic conversational. That's okay. Uh, for this, I do recommend hiring an immigration facilitator. An immigration facilitator is not that expensive. When people think immigration lawyer, you might be thinking like $200, $300 an hour. No, an immigration facilitator in Mexico, because the process is pretty straightforward, and all they're really helping you to do is fill out some paperwork and make sure that you bring the right paperwork to your canje appointment, and that, in a lot of cases, they stand in line for you at 2 or 3 in the morning or 12 o'clock the night before to get you an appointment so that you don't have to stand in line, which is really where I think their money's worth. But they charge anywhere between 200 to about $500 a person, around 4,000 to 10,000 pesos per person, depending on what trámite or what procedure you're doing, and how much they are doing for you, whether they need to translate or whether they need to, gather more documents for you, whether it's multiple people in your family that are going through this process. Uh, but if you are wanting to do it on your own, you can absolutely do it on your own. I think basic Spanish is only necessary if you um, if you don't take the time to go through their website. You do have to fill out specific forms, and they want you to bring them in either printed out, or you need to bring them in printed out, not filled in, with blue ink. So they have very specific like little things that you need to know. Then they also ask you to write a letter stating why you want to get, your residency in Mexico. Even though you've already been pre-approved, they want you to write a letter stating, what your plans are, like a letter of intent. It does need to be in Spanish. The process is pretty straightforward. In our online guide, we do lay out the process for you, like step by step, how to fill out these things. But if you wanted to do it on your own, you can always translate to English, or there are some fields that will translate to English if you choose the English version. So, all in all, I would say if it were me and I wanted to spend the least amount of time possible doing the canje process, I would hire a facilitator. So that's really what it comes down to, is like, what is your time worth to you? And that's where a lot of the contacts will facilitate things for you. Does one have to have an address in the United States to be able to receive Social Security monthly payment? No, Ana Elvia, you do not. You can have an address anywhere in the world outside of specific places, and that's all detailed in the Social Security Administration website. I recently shared a blog, and I'll share it again in the comments, where I tell you the links that you need to go check out for what the requirements are for when you sign up for Social Security benefits. If you are going to be sending in this form outside of the United States, which most of the case it will be, because if you're in the United States, it doesn't seem like they require this proof of life form. And the actual form is called SSA 7162-7162. So SSA 7162. To fill out the form, and if you are not in the United States, you're in Latin America, if you're in Mexico specifically, because Panama has a different process or has a different office, Costa Rica has a different office, et cetera, et cetera, right? It's usually the embassies. But for Mexico specifically, you can send it to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico, the U.S. Consulate General in Guadalajara, the U.S. Consulate General in Ciudad Juarez, or the Social Security Administration in Pennsylvania. And I include the forms that you need, and I have that in the blog post, so I'm going to put that in the comments for you again. I suggest you go read it and find out if this applies to you. But no, you can have an address in Mexico. Yes, basically, you can have an address in Mexico and still receive your Social Security benefits. In fact, some people receive them to their Mexican bank account. So that's also a possibility. A lot of people have reservations about sending it to their Mexican bank account because they think that Mexican bank accounts might not be as protected as like FDIC in the United States. But Mexican bank accounts are protected. They are protected up to a certain amount. So don't be afraid of sending it to a Mexican bank account if that's your reservation because of that, right? Like you think it might not, you might not get it or something like that. They are protected. Specific bank accounts, right? They have to have a certain designation. Where do you get the facilitator? So I'm going to mention this one last time because I'm sure I'm beating a dead horse, but for anything that you guys need help with, specific hand-holding on, we have a complete directory of contacts in Mexico that can help you do a variety of things. To get access to that directory of contacts, you have to buy our complete Mexico relocation guide. The link I'm going to put in the comments. You can see what's included. I'm going to put it up on the screen. We have a full directory of people, including immigration facilitators that can help you not only schedule your appointment at a Mexican consulate abroad, but also help you with the residency process in Mexico and finalizing that in Mexico. They can also help you with renewals. They can help you with changes of address. They can help you with family unification. In some cases, some of them can help you get your citizenship in Mexico. We also have a variety of different insurance agents and brokers that we recommend. We have a variety of different realtors and rental agents across Mexico that can help you find a rental in your budget and your specifications. If you need to get a driver's license or you need to register your car, we have a variety of contacts for that. We have even somebody who offers emergency services for people who don't speak any Spanish. And how this works is you pay a monthly fee, they give you a phone number, and in case of an emergency, you wanted to call 911, but you're not confident that you can get your message across because 911 in Mexico is most likely 99% of the time going to be a Spanish speaker on the other line or on the other side of the line. And anyway, there's contacts that offer their services. They have, a group of people who will answer their phones 24/7. If in case you have an emergency, you call them first and then they call 911 for you. And they have specific things on file for you, like your address, an emergency contact. So if you can't talk or you can't talk much, they can at least have that information on file for you. Great service. We also have a variety of private drivers, people in Mexico that can drive you around a specific city. Or if you don't feel comfortable driving yourself to Mexico, we have drivers that will drive you to Mexico. And some of them will even ask you to, depends on what kind of service you want, whether you just want to meet at the border and then they'll drive you across, or if you want to bring your car, but you want somebody else to drive it, you can even pay for their airfare to your city and then they will drive your car across the border and then, to wherever city you're going to end up in. We have a variety of private relocation tour guides across Mexico, and these are people that really show you what it's like to live in a specific town. So, that way you don't have to worry about renting a car. You don't have to worry about how to get around. You don't have to worry about knowing which places to visit. The purpose of a relocation tour is for this guide, who is a local, I might add, to show you what it's like to shop, show you what it's like to live in a specific neighborhood, the pros and cons of them, where to get, your agua potable or your water, how to set up utilities, what do most people do for fun, what is it like to live like a local. So you're really like learning. It's like a boot camp of learning what it's like to actually live in a town without it being all touristy, right? Or all tourism. Because you could basically go on TripAdvisor and get a city tour, but that's going to be focused on showing you like the points of interest and the history of the town and those kinds of things. And you might be more interested in knowing like, what is it like to actually live here, right? What areas flood, which ones don't? What are some little local things that I might not be able to find out anywhere online or through a touristic tour? So we have a bunch of relocation tour guides for those things. We have real estate lawyers. Anyway, we have a lot of different contacts. To go down this list, I feel like I would waste your time. So to get the guide, you have to get the directory, you have to buy the guide. And to buy the guide, the link is in the comments or on the screen. I hope that helps. If I rent in Mexico, then travel to other countries for 4 weeks at a time with a house sitter for the cat, should there be any issues with the landlords? No, not usually. Obviously, it depends on on the sitter. Like, is the sitter, going to stay there? Are they going to make sure that if in case you had, for example, dogs, and your dogs are not used to being gone overnight, and your sitter isn't going to be staying overnight, and then they bark a lot, well, maybe that might be an issue. I would say to be respectful and just to give somebody the courtesy, I would still let your landlord know that you're going to be out of town for 2 to 3 weeks, but not to worry, you have somebody coming and taking care of your place and your animals, and that you've checked them out. Usually, if you're going through something like trusted house sitters or you're going through House Sit Mexico, then they do some of this checking for you to make sure that these people are like vetted. Specifically with trusted house sitters. And with House at Mexico, you have to pay a fee to be on the platform. So that is a kind of vetting, right? To make sure that that you're hiring somebody reputable and not just anybody, or not hiring because it's usually for free, but that you're inviting somebody into your house that is going to be respectful. And you can set up a video call and you can set up these things in advance so you can at least meet the person before they come to your house. But no, there's not usually an issue with landlords if somebody were to come and house it for you. Great question. I'm a retired Canadian and my sole income is from retirement investments, RSPs, TFSAs, etc. How's that going to work with taxes? Do I pay Canadian taxes or Mexican taxes? You only pay taxes in Mexico for the income that you generate in Mexico. So if you worked in Mexico, you sold your services in Mexico, you were a realtor in Mexico, you had a small little tiendita or a small store, uh, whatever the case might be, if you have a rental property in Mexico and you rent it out on Airbnb or you rent it out through whatever other service, that is income in Mexico. So you should know that you're obligated to pay taxes in Mexico. I know a lot of people don't, and they go under the radar. But you are obligated to pay taxes in Mexico because that is an income in Mexico. So just know, right, that if you're generating an income in Mexico, whether you're selling, maybe you're selling things at the mercado, or maybe you're selling things, something really small that can go under the radar. I mean, it's up to you what you do. You know, I'm not going to tell you like how to evade taxes. You are obligated to pay taxes and anything under a certain amount. So I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's anything under, I don't remember, but a specific amount. It's like any other country, right? If you're making under a certain amount, you're not required to file federal taxes. In Mexico, it's the same way. If you are selling stuff at the mercado and you never even broke over, 2,000 pesos or 20,000 pesos, then you're probably not required to do a federal income tax return in Mexico. But after a certain amount, then yes, you are required to file a federal income tax return, and you're supposed to have an RFC, which gives you permission to generate an income in Mexico, and that's kind of your tax ID number. But no, for if this is your only income, you're living off of your investments. First of all, congrats to you. That's awesome. But no, that income is not being generated in Mexico. Therefore, you would not pay taxes in Mexico. What taxes Canada requires you to pay, that I'm not sure about. So I'm almost positive that Canada will make you pay taxes on those things. Yeah, and keep in mind, I am not a tax attorney in Mexico. So keep in mind that if you want specific information about your obligations to pay taxes in Mexico, or your how rental income works in Mexico, whether how to get an RFC, these kinds of things, I really do recommend that you speak to a contador or an accountant in Mexico, which is the equivalent of an accountant in Mexico, or a tax attorney, right? And if you're going to be incorporating a business or starting a business or whatever reason you would need a tax attorney for. So just know I am not that person. This information I am getting from the accountants that we recommend in our online guide that work in Mexico and help a variety of our customers in Mexico. So, this information I've already asked them, and then this is the information they've given me. I know specifically for you to file a tax return in Mexico, it does have to be over a specific amount that you generate over the year. So, and I don't know that number off the top of my head, and I'm afraid to give you a number and it'd be completely wrong. So sorry about that. Does Mexico enforce its right to tax worldwide income for Mexican tax residents? Do you know a lawyer that can answer this? I'm referring to U.S. sourced income exceeding Social Security. Yeah, so I think this just goes over exactly what we've talked about, in that the way that Mexico taxes its residents, citizens, is Mexican income or income generated in Mexico. If you're a Mexican national living outside of Mexico, they do have a treaty with specific different countries where it avoids you getting double taxation, because Mexican citizens are required to pay taxes in Mexico, even if they live outside of Mexico. But there are certain treaties, like, for example, Mexicans who live in the United States. Well, to avoid double taxation, Mexico has a treaty with the United States where you only pay taxes in the country that you're generating that income. In that case would be the United States. But yeah, to answer your question, we have a variety of CPAs or contadores that we recommend in our online guide. And they specialize in different things. Some of them specialize in getting you an RFC. Some of them specialize in helping you incorporate a business. Some of them specialize in helping you with, your taxes in your house or closings and things like that. So just know that we have a variety of different contacts in our online guide, and surely somebody can help you with your question. All right. So I am out of time, you guys. I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of questions that I didn't get to. Seems to be the common denominator in these live streams, but I hope that for those that I did get to, that it was valuable to you, that you got a lot of your questions answered, that you are still liking this channel, that you find a lot of value in the information that we share. I have a video coming up on Sunday, the 19th of March, all about Ajijic. So we're going to include some rental examples, some cost of living examples, what it's like to live there, what the vibe is like, reasons why you might like it. And it's all about Ajijic. So please don't forget to give this live stream a like. And if you haven't subscribed to Mexico Relocation Guide, please subscribe now. That way you never miss this kind of content. If this is what you're interested in, moving to Mexico, this is what this channel is all about. So I'm very, very grateful for all of you supporting the channel, for you guys being here week over week as I do this. And I would love your comments, your feedback. What else do you want to see? Again, I shared a lot of different blog posts throughout this channel. So if you can think of different apps that I need to add, or if you can think of different things that I need to add to a specific blog post, feel free to comment on it. I see all of your comments. I can't guarantee that I will take every single suggestion and work on it, but I do see every single comment. So thank you guys. I will see you guys very soon. For customers of Mexico Relocation Guide, we do have an exclusive video next week on the 22nd of March, and it's all about real estate, buying, selling, renting. We're going to have an amazing real estate lawyer with us. So if you're not a customer yet, consider becoming a customer, because we do exclusive content for customers all the time. And if you're interested in becoming a customer, remember, go to mexicorelocationguide.com/guide. So we're going to be talking about fideicomisos, RFCs, rentals, right? Like, what kinds of obligations does the landlord have? Who's in charge of making repairs? What are some common scams, right? And how to avoid them? Preventas, pre-sales. We're going to talk about a lot of things. So it's going to be a really, really good one. But that's for customers only. So remember, if you want to become a customer, check out mexicorelocationguide.com/guide. Okay, that's it for me today. I will see you guys soon.